This segment is to talk about sellers. And this is probably my all-time favorite section when we're talking about how does a seller pick a realtor. It's a fascinating study that I've been doing for the last 37 years, trying to figure out the mind of the seller, because so many things go through people's minds when they're trying to sell probably the biggest investment they ever had, and they've done it maybe once or twice or none times in their whole life. So how does a seller pick a realtor? That's today's subject. I don't think most people realize the difference between a RE/MAX agent and a traditional real estate company agent. A traditional real estate company like Coldwell Banker, Century 21, Watson, ERA, Prudential, Keller Williams, Berkshire Hathaway, these are all traditional real estate houses that have a plan where they train the new realtors coming in, just getting their real estate license, and they fill their office with new agents. And what you might notice when you drive around town now is most often you will see a sign for a traditional real estate office with nobody's name under it, no realtor's name under it. There's a reason why, because in these traditional real estate houses, the broker owns the listing, and the agent that brings the listing is called the seller's agent. And the way this game works is, in today's market, let's say there's a 6% commission. 90% of the sales in the multiple listing involve a buyer's agent with a buyer's broker and a seller's agent with the seller's broker. So that's two parties, four people, okay? And the way it works is there's a 6% commission. It's split 3 and 3, and that 3% is usually split 50%, 50%, 50%, and 50%. So that is a 1.5%, 1.5%, 1.5%, 1.5%. And when it's explained like that to the sellers, they begin to realize where I'm going with this conversation. If 90% of the sales are done by two brokers, the listing agent and the listing broker is going to get 3%. They're going to split that typically 50-50. The broker is responsible for spending the broker's money marketing and advertising your listing. The agent is not going to spend their 1.5% advertising your listing, because they probably have 5, 10, 20 listings, and they aren't going to spend their money when the most they're going to make is 1.5%. The broker, on the other hand, the most they can make is 1.5% if they don't spend any money on marketing your house. They have office space lease, they have staff salaries, they have desk leases, they have telephones, copying machines, electric bill, they have district managers, they have advertising costs. All of that has to come out of that 1.5%. So I propose to you, in a normal situation, how much money is that broker actually going to spend marketing and advertising your house? Now, the RE/MAX agents, on the other hand, when we make a sale and we get a listing, we don't split the commissions with our broker. The RE/MAX agents are typically the agents that have been in the business for 10, 15 or more years, and we have a different way of doing it. We pay the RE/MAX office a flat fee, let's call it $1,000 a month, to be in their office and use the RE/MAX logo in our advertising. And when we take a listing, we spend our own money advertising your listing. Okay? This is very important, because I'm not going to take a listing that I don't think is going to sell, because I'm committing to spending my money on the listing to make the 3%. Now, in honesty, about 75% of the time, I happen to also bring the buyer and I get the other 3%. But that's not relevant for this conversation. I take the listing if I believe it will sell. A lot of these other real estate houses will take the listing hoping that it doesn't sell right away, because the longer the sign is out there in your front yard, the more phone calls they're going to get from people out driving around thinking about buying a house. So, I propose to you, there's two different schools here. The traditional real estate houses want the sign out there as long as it can be, usually 6 months, and they will let you tell them what price they should list the house at, and if that's overpriced, which it usually is, if the house is overpriced and it doesn't sell, whose fault is that? The seller will blame it on the realtor will blame it on the seller, because the seller wanted to list it at this price. So the broker winds up getting 5 to 25 phone calls a week off that sign, unless you're in a gated community. And then the way it works is when somebody calls in, and since there's nobody's name on the sign, that's called a house call. And the office manager assigns that house call to the next agent whose turn it is to take a house call. So here's the scenario. You list your house for $500,000, it should be $420,000, and the call comes in and it's assigned to the agent, and the agent answers the phone and says, "How may I help you?" And the buyer says, "I'm interested in this house on so-and-so lane. How much is it?" Well, the agent says, "Excuse me, I'll go look it up." And they look it up and they say it's $500,000. Well, the buyer probably is not thinking it's $500,000, so immediately there's dead silence. The agent is trained to say, "May I help you find a different house in a different price range?" And often the buyer will say, "Well, yeah, I was thinking of houses in the $300,000 range." So now the agent has a buyer that they can work and sell them a $300,000 house, because your house was listed, and the way it was overpriced, it's not going to sell right away. Now, 3 months into it, 4 months into it, 5 months into it, the listing agent is trained to approach the seller and say, "Look, I think we need to lower the price because we haven't had any offers." Well, I see that all the time. I can tell when we're looking at houses how long the houses have been on the market. There's a category on the listing paperwork that says active days on the market. Invariably in your neighborhood, if your house is priced right for the condition that it's in, it should sell in 7 to 20 days. 30 days on the outside. If your house has been on the market for 128 days or 142 days, something's wrong. Now, under the traditional real estate model, they don't want your house to sell, because then the sign goes away and they don't get the phone calls. On the RE/MAX side, since we're spending our own money marketing and advertising your house, the only time we get rewarded for our risk, our expense, is when your house sells. Now, truly, when you call a realtor to sell your house, are you calling somebody to sell your house, or are you calling somebody to list your house? There's a big difference. I don't want another overpriced listing. Most RE/MAX agents are not interested in taking an overpriced listing. We will tell you the truth. And my specific experience is you'll appreciate the truth when I explain to you why your house is only worth this, not what you thought it was worth. There's a whole 40-minute presentation on a market analysis that I present, why your house is worth what. And we actually have a little report card that we go through. We ask 10 questions on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is, it's the original roof, the original air conditioner, the original kitchen cabinets. 10 is, you just remodeled last Friday. And somewhere in between, your house is scored on my report card from a 1 to a 10. After we ask 10 questions, the potential for a score of 100 is there. I can tell you this, I've never had a house in my career that scored a 90 anything, okay? So for any seller that thinks their house is perfect and their house is top dollar because they put a new air conditioner in 6 years ago, that's just not realistic. And the buyers are not stupid. The buyers are looking for things like this because they may have had to replace an air conditioner or a new roof or a new kitchen or new plumbing or new electrical or a new septic drain field or something like that over the years, or their friends did, and they're very gun shy now. So when I do a market analysis, we place your house where it deserves to be. Every neighborhood is from X to Z, from the low of X to the high of Z. It's not up here, it's Z. Z is some house deserves top dollar because the condition it's in, the sellers have done this and done this and done this and done this, and they've done it recently and tastefully. So this is just a tidbit of what an experienced realtor can do for a seller. And the fact is, you're going to pay the same commission anyway. So why pick some agency that's almost always going to not be the one that sells your house? If you pick someone that's more likely to sell your house, us RE/MAX agents have the ability to negotiate our commission a little bit if we feel it's needed to make the deal work. So I don't want to promise you that we will reduce our commissions because every RE/MAX agent is different. What I normally do is I make the offer. If you give me the listing, we will charge 6%. If I am successful in listing and selling your house, I will do it for 5%. I just doubled the work that I need to do because normally I would just represent the seller for 3%. But since I'm representing the buyer for normally 3%, I would do it for 2% to give my seller a reason to choose me over the other agents. There's so many factors that goes into how you choose a realtor to sell your house, but I hope these little tidbits are just the beginning of why you would choose me over some other company. Thank you and have a great day.